Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Singapore GP. We have a lot to unpack, a lot to talk about. This was a great weekend. Rob, I'm hoping you were as excited as I was going through all this.
I'm just feeling really sad, Brian. Really sad right now
Why is that?
because because of just how amazing today was and how it's the only one that's going to be like this all season. Because today was like I can't. I say I can't describe it. I'm going to have to. That's kind of what we do here, is by like have a podcast and try to describe stuff. But do you know how like we've put on a brave face and we've said Max is amazing, Red Bull different league, we're loving the best of the rest battle,
Right.
and we kind of kid ourselves into believing that's true. And then a race comes along
Well,
today
yeah.
where four cars are separated. The lead four cars are separated by like a second for the last 10 laps, and you just think how close these cars are now, except for Max. We could have been having this every week. And that's not a dig at Max and Red Bull. They've just absolutely aced it this season. But for all of the absolute amazingness of today, I'm a little bit sad that that's probably it for the rest of the season. But
I
we'll get
know.
there. We'll
Well,
get there.
maybe. We'll see. We'll talk about that. We'll break it down, but I agree. It was really good.
So
Although
good.
I can't wait. I have a little perspective on the race when we get into it. A couple things, a couple takeaways.
I
But
mean,
I'm holding it.
I'm going to guess where you're going, but I won't do it now. So we got to, for any new listeners,
Yeah.
we will dive in first with our news and social roundup, where we take a look at what we found in the week's news and social media feeds. Brian will open up the video vault, where we'll take a look at some probably really random videos that Brian found late at night, drunk on his sofa.
In
Then
my
we'll
hotel room.
then we'll break down the race weekend. I think now there's been a few hours since the race fantasy is actually calculated, so we
A
might be
little
able to do a
faster this
fantasy
time.
update.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Look at that. And then a look ahead to Suzuka, because we go back to back in the Japanese Grand Prix next week. So, boomski. Let's dive in at the beginning. Special liveries, Brian.
Oh man.
We had two of them announced this week.
Yep.
Couple of things here, and I'd love your thoughts on this. Number one, feels like we've had a strong year for special liveries this year. We haven't really had too many duffers. We had that Aston Martin that wasn't really a special; it was a tribute thing for a sponsor. But other than that, some stellar ones. We had Williams and McLaren come out this week. Now, did you see the launch video for McLaren's stealth mode?
No.
I tell you what, launch videos of special liveries now in 2023 are better than brand new car reveals from 5 years ago. It's insane. It's insane. Which one was your favorite?
Oh, the Williams. I
Oh,
mean, for
yes.
me, the Williams Golf livery this week was top notch, top tier, can't be beat. It was. I liked. I'm becoming. I should go on the Williams store and just buy everything they have because between Albon and my cheering on Logan the Sergeant and all of the different things going on there, their British GP with the flag on the back was
That was
fantastic. But I still feel, even though some of my friends and I, Adam, I see you, debated which is better, the golf one now is one of the best liveries I've seen in years. I thought it was better than McLaren's golf attempt, which was too light blue, almost looked white during the race. I thought this was fantastic. I couldn't have rated it any higher.
no. When I voted for it in the fan vote, when they had the four of them going
Yep.
head to head through that thing, thought this was the best one, but you don't know what it's going to look like until it's out on track. And sometimes we had, Andy, who was at Monza, didn't get his full frontal of the Alpha, and
Which
didn't
also was a banger, even though
was a
Andy
banger.
said it was all right. His full frontal.
And
as you said.
But yeah, that Williams was just brilliant. And I'm all for it. I love special liveries. I'm still holding out a sliver of hope that one day Ferrari go all yellow, but they probably won't.
Nope.
Theirs was actually pretty good. Their Monza one, there was the tribute to
Yep,
the Le Mans 24. That was another good one as well. So
it was.
it was. They completely randomly, completely different. This one just caught my eye.
I
I
didn't
thought he
see
was
any
in
of
trouble.
this, so teach me.
So, yeah, I just saw this story about Nigel Mansell is auctioning more than 300 items that he had in a museum in Jersey. I was like, oh man, hope he's like not falling on hard times. But no, he's closing his museum down. In fact, he closed it in 2019 to clear space for another business venture. So he's selling off a bunch of stuff. And it's huge what he's selling. It's 32 race helmets. 78 baseball caps, 50 race suits, and more than 200 trophies and awards.
Wow.
And he also said he's got Unusual items include opened and unopened magnums of champagne at his race wins, as well as a commemorative Japanese crystal dagger. I mean, that's got to be. Why would you sell that? I mean,
I
that sounds
don't know.
amazing.
You don't have room for that in your house. You can't find a drawer like you don't have a drawer filled with like ketchup packets like the rest of the world where you can put your crystal Japanese dagger in there.
Oh, I know. So, if I was a man of more wealthy means, I was looking through the list. There's a lot of nice things in there. I'd love to have a couple of Mansell race helmets. That'd be amazing. But
A couple
I
of
just,
Mansell race helmets. I'd take
yeah,
the
I just walk
dagger.
around them in. Yeah, I take all of them. I'd have that and the crystal dagger. I just like pretend I was an extra in Star Wars or something. But then we had one that kind of hits a bit. It kind of hits a bit hard because you're like, oh, really? Please don't tease us. Did
Yeah.
you see the interview that Brundle did?
I didn't. I saw about it, but I didn't get a chance to see it this
Oh,
week.
so Brundle sat down with Vettel, and he said whether could he follow in the footsteps of Mansell, Alonso, Raikkonen by returning after a so-called retirement. He said, "Can't say no because you don't know." I think it's something that if you asked all of them, probably some of them would have said no, and some of them said I don't know. But in the end, they all came back, so I can't exclude it. I mean, what's going on? Are we getting Inspector Seb coming back to the grid?
Did he quote this radio bit at all?
There's something loose between my legs.
I didn't see that.
No. Man, that would be great if he came back. That would just be tremendous. I think we'd all love to see him back on the grid. Although, I got to be that guy. In what seat?
Back to Aston Martin. I think they've got one they might want to free up.
The boss's son, he ain't going anywhere. He ain't going
I know,
anywhere.
I know.
Speaking of seats, actually, good segue there. It was exciting this week to see Joe announced for next year at Alfa Romeo. We talk about in what seat would somebody go. I don't know who they'd put in that seat, in the Alfa Romeo seat, who's earned it. And I recognize earned it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people in the series leading up to F1. In F1 or as a historical driver of the recent past, I think Joe has done a really good job in that seat, and I think the car stinks. And so, what he's done with it is pretty good.
He was fair way off Bottas last year in points, but he was no slouch. He scored a good amount of points, and I kind of look at it and think, well, Bottas is the seasoned driver, so he should score more. When the car is good, Bottas should get points out of that car, and Joe should weigh in every now and again. Exactly what he did. This year, the car stinks. And when you look at his haul and think, well, he's not really doing great, look at Bottas. He's scrambling every now and again. Like the point last week was his first point for ages. So, no, I think Joe's doing really well. I think he's really acquitted himself well. Seems a nice guy. I don't see any reason to punt him out of the team. So, silly season is dead, I think.
Pretty much. I mean, Alpha Tauri has to kind of make some calls for next year, but
Yeah.
they have a selection to choose from, and what they do will be interesting. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty much over. However, it was very close to being a little more silly when I was in Vegas this week and I ran into Valtteri's Alfa Romeo. They had the barriers around it, and I hopped those, jumped in, took it out for a spin on the track, and Alfa Romeo called me. They said, "We'd like you to be a reserve driver for the team." And I said, "Sign me up. I'd love to do that." It was fan. But then I went drifting after that, which some people saw on my Instagram. And I'm like, yeah, this is too much. I'm done. I'm out. I don't want to be a reserve driver. I don't want to do this drift. I got to go back to work. So I bailed. But I will say this. Vegas is all about the F1. They are everywhere, all the time, resurfacing everything during the day, at night. You can't go anywhere. And then everybody talks about it. You go to anywhere, it's all they talk about. I bought some merch in my hotel lobby because I couldn't make it down to wherever else there might have been merch. I might have accidentally bought a flat brim hat. I haven't really had a chance to fix this situation. But then as I'm kind of looking at all this and thinking about it, we start hearing from a variety of people, and I've read a variety of articles, that the demand that they anticipated, especially with the most recent ticket launches and packages, may not be there. That some of the flights are relatively open that they've added, that there are hotel packages sitting open, and that there are ticket packages sitting open. So be fascinating to watch what comes over the next 6 weeks, getting ready
My
for
favorite
Vegas.
thing about you being there was that you'd only just arrived, hadn't you? And you sent me that WhatsApp said, look, go and see if you can find anything about the track. And you'd obviously not been out into the great open area yet. And you sent me a WhatsApp that was something along the lines of, I'm not sure there's going to be much about, can you Google something, see if there's anything that I can go find? And then like 5 minutes later, I'm getting like videos of you drifting around sections of the track. You've got Valtteri's car, you've bought merch. I'm like, I think it was pretty easy to find by the sounds of things, Brian.
I mean, I almost didn't make it to the event because I was running late. And when I showed up and there was an Alfa Romeo there, my CEO walks up to me. I basically push her aside, like, hang on a second, I got to take a picture of this car. Anyway, a couple rumors, though, about the seats that we should cover, and we should do this appropriately from the chopper. Reporting over the rumor mill, a couple different sites told us that Nico Hülkenberg had been thought about as a replacement for Joe at Alfa Romeo. Nico Hülkenberg, I mean, he's doing fine, and he's qualifying fine, but that's not an upgrade, in my humble opinion.
Not really, no.
And then the second one, and we've done a pretty good job trying to avoid all the Helmut Marko crap because, whatever. And then Red Bull comes out and says he's not actually an employee of Red Bull, and then everyone shows the statements that says he's an officer of Red Bull Racing, and it's just a whole big debacle. Apparently, according to Krone.at, I would like Massa to win this title, and Mr. Hamilton, for whom records are not so important, would then have one less. But please, if this is real, can someone stop recording what he says? And if it's fake, can we stop putting out fake news? I'm so tired of Helmut Marko and Felipe Massa and all of those related topics. So let's move.
The stupid thing, the ridiculousness of this statement is if Massa wins his legal proceeding and takes that title and takes one off Lewis, pretty sure Lewis is going to get one back straight away because a precedent has now been set, and I'm sure he'll go and get his hands on the 2021 title instead. So be careful what you wish for, Helmut. That's a good point. Oh, man. Right, last week we covered about Andretti rebranding to Andretti Global and potentially getting the green light from the FIA, but they had to kind of see if they can get permission from Liberty and the rest of the teams. But the European Commission has got a whole bunch of rules around kind of not being able to change your mind when you've sort of set things into agreement. So because they put that Concord agreement out there that was signed up by everybody and said it costs 200 million to come in, trying to change the rules on that now to prevent them from coming in or any of these kind of things, the Commission basically is apparently all over this to say, look, you can't have like a anti-monopoly or whatever it is. It's they come in and they pay the fee and you can't exclude them on safety grounds. Well, come on in. The water's lovely. It's interesting to see how this one develops.
It most certainly will. And then one last thing. We have to cover this. And one of our favorite sponsor stories from earlier in the year was AlphaTauri, who was going to be rebranded with Hugo Boss Bulls Racing, or as people on the internets would say, Toro Bosso. And we were excited about this, but now there's a rumor it ain't going to be Hugo Boss. It's going to be, and we're going to both pronounce this name at the same time on the count of three. So go on one. 3, 2, 1. Adidas.
Adidas.
Nope.
That's how I've always said it. Well,
Adidas.
Whatever. We don't know what it means.
Say Puma.
But it's
Say
not
Puma.
Oh, it's not Poma. It's Puma. It's got a U in there. It's a Puma. It's like Humber. Humber of the Lion King had double O.
Say aluminium.
Oh, no, that's a correct word. Well done. That must have hurt saying that the correct way.
I just wanted to see what you would do.
Right, enough of this nonsense. Let's crank open the video vault.
Yeah, it's a special edition this week, so I'm really excited about opening the vault.
Yeah, I don't get that. You have to explain this because I've looked at the three and I'm not quite sure what's so special about it. But
well, first of all, we'll get to it. I'm going to hold the special one to the last. So 3 videos, relatively brief. All access F1. Yuki drives a Honda NSX at the Red Bull Formula Nürburgring. AlphaTauri channel 10 minutes. Skip it. Pass. This is literally the behind the scenes. Like when they say all access, they mean all access. This isn't him actually doing anything except getting ready for the event. And like a sucker, gosh. I'm watching this thing for 7 of the 10 minutes. I'm like, is he actually going to drive the car? Is he going to drive the car now? Is he going to drive the car now? How about now? Nope. Don't watch it. Okay. Unless you're a huge Yuki fan, then watch it. It's worth it for that.
The first one's a banger in this special edition. Then?
These get better as we go. Okay. And so normally I do only videos from the last week, right? Well, I went back in time and watched Crashgate Simplified, a detailed account about Formula One's darkest moment on CY, or Cranky Yankee Motorsport. 16 minutes. Now, this is about a year and a half old. It's so good. So I'd admitted last week I didn't know a ton about Crashgate. I knew the headlines, right? I knew the skeleton of the story, but I didn't know all the meat on the bones. And so watching this kind of filled it in. And something I did know that I didn't want to go into last week, even though it was for the Singapore GP, which is about to be done when we recap it here. I don't understand this. Pat Simmons was indefinitely suspended from the crash from Renault. He ordered the crash, was suspended because of the crash from Renault. I said that wrong, but you know my point. He was one of two people indefinitely suspended. He was reinstated because of an appeal through the French courts. He came back to Williams a few years after that. I would assume still kind of toxic. But he's been the chief technical officer of Formula One for a while. How do you make the transition from pariah, who ordered one of the craziest debacles in your sport, to a handful, decade later, working for the governing body or the people who put on the sport? I don't understand that. That would be like Tim Donaghy, the NBA referee who cheated and changed the games around, coming back to work for the NBA proper. That would never happen in a million years. I don't understand this part.
Maybe it's like when the FBI hire hackers, I don't know, to come and help them work on security, better the devil you know and all that.
Anti-crashing regulations.
Yeah, this will definitely help make sure there's never another Crashgate, because he'll know what to look out for. You see, they got him on the inside now.
Pat, what do you think? Was the rig in? And so the reason this is a special edition, the reason the last video is last, it's quite long, is because listener Laura, DRS, or 100 Seconds of DRS gold medalist Laura from a couple weeks ago, submitted this to me, and I have not had time to watch it because it's 45 minutes. Okay, so it's 45 minutes, so you got to want this. But trust me, it's good. Formula One documentary, Pit Stop in 2 Seconds. It is so good. So first of all, Coulthard does he's the MC of this thing through his Whisper Films. It is amazing. It basically shows literally the history of the pit stop, how they started in the 50s and progressed to where they are now. And at some points, which I did not know, I'll share the one thing I didn't know, they'd gone away, right? They just ran the whole race on the tires they started on. They didn't refuel because they'd done the refueling. They gave up on it. And Gordon Murray, who is a huge figure in the sport of F1 and also designed one of my favorite road-going cars ever, the McLaren F1, which is the coolest car around, he had the idea that said, look, we are losing so much time starting off with a full tank of fuel. Why don't we start off with less fuel, make it halfway, and then refilled halfway? And he did the math on how much time you lost per thing. And we might as well change tires while we're at it too. So he basically brought the pit stop back. And it's like the coolest thing to see. And I've been very anti-refueling because of the safety issues. The Jos Verstappen, and he was in this, by the way, as well. Yeah. When he's on a ball of flames in the pit lane. And, he talks about that and what that was like. And it was a powerful interview. But I watched this, I'm thinking more strategy. Bring it back, man. I had been anti until I saw this.
If they could really ensure safety wasn't a concern anymore, it's a massive strategy thing to bring back. I'm not sure, no matter how safe they try to make these things, at some point, hose has to come off a car that is pumping gas at high pressure, petrol. So there's always a chance of something going wrong, I guess.
Well, I'd say check it out. If anyone has time, please go watch it. We'll have it in the show notes. Laura, thank you. It was epically good. I definitely enjoyed it. It made my flight back from Vegas that much more better. And with that, we will close the video vault, which is great because now we can get into the weekend itself. Rob, you want to get going on practice? You were all over practice. You were texting me furiously. I'm like, ooh.
Wait, yeah, not that you saw them until you actually woke up, I don't think, because you slept through practices, right?
No, I worked.
It was early for you. I worked and slept, same thing. This was like 5:30 a.m., I think, one of them for you. Anyway, free practice 1, 2, 3. I can kind of hit this all in a couple of sentences, really. Red Bull definitely won Team Radio of the weekend in free practice 1. Turns out the only thing they won all weekend. For the Godzilla remark, Max saw a lizard, came around again, saw another one. The radio came on. There's another lizard. It's smaller than last time, though. And race engineer says, maybe Godzilla had a baby. It's little things like that. McLaren, for all their stealth mode shenanigans and drop videos of showcasing it, covered the whole thing in FlowViz, so definitely the opposite of stealth mode because we could see it from space. It was so bright. Ferrari looking good, FP2 Ferrari looking good, Red Bull are struggling. I wrote, this looks like echoes of Monza, where a Ferrari teasing us here, a Red Bull sandbagging. FP3, same again. Sainz tops out again. Mercedes came to the party, and Red Bull continued to struggle.
Right.
So I kind of wrote at the time, Red Bull not doing well for once. Only time will tell if this translates to Sunday. What wise prophet? No, I was a prophet. I couldn't think of the word then, but it was that me seeing the future stuff, right?
Nailed it.
100%.
And so at the end of practice, Bryson Sullivan, who we think is a great follow at Natural Paradigm on Twitter, and I'm never calling it X ever again. I can't, just I'm too old. So he said, coming into this weekend, Red Bull said Singapore would be difficult for them, but they seem to be having mechanical and tire warm-up issues. Not yet convinced. Technical Directive 18 is the explanation. Now, Rob and I did an amazing job covering Technical Directive 18 with deflexy wings and floors and the thing that I couldn't even pronounce.
It's the favorite of all my technical directives.
What's better than 17 by one? And so I do want to come back to this. Remind me of this at the end of the race. But so everyone's saying,
okay, because
I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on. Oh, no, I'm putting my foil hat on.
Okay.
Keep going. Let's talk about quality.
You can keep your foil hat on for about a week and then watch Red Bull disappear, because this is a massive nothing burger, but it'll be interesting watching you try to make it into one.
Yeah.
Then quali. Oh my gosh. We write our notes here just to say who we lost, and I had to write lost Stroll in capitals, because boy did we lose Stroll in Q1. And you could see it because the onboard was live with him at the moment it happened.
Yes.
He was coming around trying to push for the final corner. He screwed up, I don't know the numbers of the corners, but it was the last
corner.
It was the two prior to that. He was out of shape. Yeah, and the little left-right, I think it is, just before they take the final left-hander. He'd screwed that one up, was out of position, so he kind of just like floored it to try to make up that lost time, and absolutely wiped out big style. I mean, bits of car going absolutely everywhere, and it looked like a heavy one, but he jumped out of that thing pretty quick.
How do you do that? I'm so happy that he was all right. Like, that was a incredibly scary crash. And there was a video that we posted that someone took from the stands where it happened right in front of him. We put it on Twitter. And it made it look worse, if possible.
Well, I go back to when we had Jack Villeneuve on the show, and we were asking him about crashes. And he said,
I'm looking for it. Hold on.
You look for the clip while I pad here a little bit. When you see the ones where bits go everywhere, they tend to be the ones where you get hurt the least, because all the energy is dissipated through all of the systems that are designed to basically collapse and fall off and splinter and go everywhere. Especially when you get a little bit more of a sideways hit as well, where you pirouette round, then it all looks absolutely awful. But it's the ones where you just thud straight into tires or into a barrier and nothing kind of goes anywhere. Those were the ones that he said kind of really hurt.
This is Jacques Villeneuve, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
Rob, it's interesting you say that.
You got there in the end.
You know what's interesting you say that, because the time we had...
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
I asked Valtteri that very question about those types of crashes, and I referenced his Mexico crash, where he went along the wall right into the barriers and had that quick stop, and he said that wasn't actually his worst, but that was one of them because of, as you said, that kind of thud where you just come to a complete stop and nothing dissipates anything. But can we agree it was great? Watching Lance get out of the car on his own power was
amazing.
Like the greatest thing. Yeah. I'm like, that quick afterwards, and he didn't need help. And obviously they took him to the track because of the G-force and the speed at which he crashed. But man, it's so great that he's doing all right.
Yeah, and then lots of people got screwed over because of that. There were people. I mean, it was a right traffic jam on the track. Everyone was going out for their second run, and Stroll was one of the first few, I think, across the line. So everybody behind him lost their second run.
Oscar was right next, and Valtteri was on a heater, and
I know. So we lost Bottas, Piastri, Sargent, and Zhou, as well as Stroll, and we lost Stroll for the entire weekend. Then, as it transpired. But then, Q2.
What?
Oh, my gosh.
What happened in Q2?
Oh, my gosh. Red Bull just carried on struggling. They could not get those tyres, whether lit up or it was balanced or whatever it was. They'd been putting different floors in. They'd been taking bits back out again. I mean, and I don't want to take away from your tinfoil hat coming later on, because I'm looking forward to it.
Technical Directive 18.
But it was basically the same as last year. Last year, they struggled in Singapore.
Yeah,
Max
true.
has never done well here, ever.
Nope.
Coming into it, the week ahead, running up to it, they said, we've got a car that seems it's designed for 23 out of 24 tracks. We've got one track where we're not expecting to be great, and they just weren't. And it was, and I don't want to take pleasure in this, what I'll say, it was refreshing to see them struggling, not just having it their own way, because it just meant we had stories everywhere else. And boy, do we have a story. Max is in danger. He's in P10. He puts his final lap in, and he's there. And there's only 3 cars, I think, left to come across the line. Gasly, Albon, 4. Gasly, Albon, Tsunoda, and Lawson.
Of course.
And one of them, Albon, bailed. I think he must have entered the pits because his lap was rubbish. And I think it was Gasly. I probably got this wrong. A car came over the line and was like a tiny bit behind Max, and Max is still safe. And then the next car came round, same thing again. There's only one guy left to come over. Lowly Liam Lawson, who's only just trucked up to this Formula One circus, who, by the way, is driving in the sister team, so won't possibly do anything to upset the royalty.
The younger sister team, if you will, the less talented sister team.
And when Lawson crossed that line, it was like everything went into slow motion for a minute, where I looked across the left of the timing board, waiting to see what was going to happen, and I honestly couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Law Baver.
I mean, for me, I think Max is a generational talent. We'll talk about some of his records again, but just to have a little bit of shakeup, this was my reaction when Lawson popped above Max.
Yes!
And I'm like, all right, this is going to be a spicy weekend. We'll see what we got in front of us. By the way, how come, I know we'll finish Q3 in a sec, how come Max didn't get any penalties? One of those on-track impedings wasn't impeding. The one in the pit lane, 6 to 1 half dozen the other, and the other one on track was a nothing burger. AlphaTauri didn't even send anybody when he impeded Yuki, who didn't get it through, to the next round because of Max. And they didn't send anybody to go argue this because they're the sister team.
They weren't summoned.
No,
they weren't summoned. So again, not wanting to get the tinfoil hats out. So apparently, because of some earlier bizarre decision by the stewards, one of the earlier impeding ones, I think it was because Stroll was off at the hospital. They did something and made a view on that, but they couldn't bring Stroll along. They were like, you know what, we can rule these. We don't need to bring the teams along. We'll maybe put a little memo out and they can come along if they like. But apparently, according to an article I was reading earlier, they didn't summon them. They made the decision, and it was kind of left out there that, they'll know they can pop over if they need to.
Was the article written by Vax Verstappen?
No. So it's, again, I think people are sometimes too quick to jump to the conspiracy theories here.
Yes,
I just think, wow.
Yes, we are. All right, talk about Q3. Talk about Q3.
Q3, it was a bit of a blur, really, to be honest, because I'm still reeling from the fact that Red Bull really hadn't been fooling us all the way through practices, and they had struggled so badly. And while it was amazing that Sainz got pole, it didn't. I think my adrenaline had already peaked at this point. So it was amazing. So Sainz, from Russell, from Leclerc, from Norris, any one of those 4, I think, could have got pole.
They were all super close.
Super close. Hamilton didn't quite seem to light it up. When we talk about the race, he obviously had the pace, but just didn't seem to. But we're kind of doing a disservice here to the fact that as we've been going through all the people that were out, we had both Hasses.
K-Mag was in the 3rd row. Kevin Magnussen remembered how to qualify. I think he got tired of all this nonsense about Nico out qualifying him every weekend. And he's like, oh yeah, I still know how to drive. And he put it on. He was 6th. A Haas. 6th in quali. 3rd row. What?
So, to-back pole positions for the smooth operator. It's, baby.
Well, you said it. Operator! Won't be the only time we use it this week.
Well, we'll use it again surely later because he sang it in the car at the end.
Yeah, he did. One last thing before we go to the race. You mentioned this pole, back-to-back poles for smooth operator Monza as well. It was also pointed out, right? So Lawson made it into Q3, which is another... I mean, he's going to get points, like an amazing weekend. But AlphaTauri upgraded just about everything. They upgraded, literally just about everything. Like, I don't think they missed a single part. The floor body, floor edge, diffuser, side pod inlet, engine cover, rear suspension, rear corner, other rear view mirrors. That's a portion of what they brought. And it's a bummer that Yuki had the weekend he had because... He wasn't there. He didn't he got impeded and then didn't get his lap in quali, and he ran less than 1 lap, and we'll talk about that too. That was a weirdo situation.
That's a very weird one, that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get to the race.
So we get to the race. So David, we see you. I see you because you sent this and I snapped it for us. Good luck condensing all that into one podcast, were his words, because we'll get into this. I will say this as we get to the race. I thought it was a tale of 2 halves. Excuse me. We don't have cough buttons. And so two halves, meaning I thought the beginning of the race was a bit boring because it was strategic. And it was, in my opinion, only strategic. There was like two overtakes. Max did both, moved up to 8th or whatever. And then everybody kind of sat for a very long time in their positions while Carlos tried to dictate the race, which was brilliant and a great job by Ferrari. But there was like no movement just about anywhere.
There never is in Singapore.
I know
There's
that.
never any overtaking here. So,
and that's why they backed people up.
And I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think this one goes into my whole thing of I love the tyres to be forced to just go off more because
well, these were the softest in the range, unfortunately.
I know, that's what I mean, but we both of us have complained about the fact that we don't like these ones that can be done as one stoppers because it just takes a little bit away, and then you see what we saw at the beginning. And probably if this had been last season, I would have been with you that I didn't really enjoy the first half of the race and it wasn't really that great. But actually, I think I was still so hyped up on the fact that we had a real race going on here and we weren't going to see Max. And again, this is nothing against Max because had Max driven through the field and taken the win, that would have been brilliant to see as well because it would have been absolutely stuff of legends to do that at Singapore, to take it from 11th to a win. So I had this, it was more like while Sainz is just putting his slippers on and just kind of slowing everybody down and backing people up, you've also got this anticipation of, is Max going to do this? Are we going to get a new winner this season? Oh my God, we're going to get a new winner this season. So I'm with you. The first half was, I'm not a big fan of tyres and management, but that's all it was.
If you'd flipped it, like if and I know this doesn't make a lot of sense, but listen for a second. If the second half of the race happened first, in terms of the passing, the close overtaking, and then we got the tire management lull, it would have been a bad race. Obviously, you wanted to finish on a high note. The second half of this race was great. So
fantastic.
Everyone on the internet is saying this is the best race of the year. I'm not sure I fully agree, but I definitely enjoyed the race.
I think it's because of circumstance. Yes, I think it's because of circumstance, because I was able to enjoy even tyre management snooze fest, which I normally hate, just because of what was happening. And just, I mean, you're absolutely right.
Sorry.
Anyway.
I just keep going. So let's get started.
You're right. So the start, Ferrari get a lot of bad. Well, not bad. They actually got a lot of deserved criticism for being absolutely awful when it comes to strategy. Today, I think they had it absolutely nailed.
Yeah, you play to win the game. They won.
I love the fact they put Leclerc on softs, despite the fact that it was not a tyre really to go too far into the race. They just wanted track position. We're going to put you on super sticky softs. You're going to launch off the line. You're going to nail George.
Yep.
And we're going to go off and dictate this race. And chef's kiss, execute to perfection. Yeah. Brilliant start.
Agreed. So, as you said, he had a good start. He takes Russell. Lewis gets way off the line takes Russell, Lando, but then he goes off the track. I understood why he had to give the position back to George. I don't know why he had to give it to Lando. I thought he'd had him already by the time he went off, but apparently not. Martin disagrees, thought they should give it back. I don't know. And then there were two other things on the lead lap I want to highlight just before I turn it back to you. One, very little conversation about Liam Lawson and Checo hitting each other. There were carbon fiber bits going everywhere. And so I was wondering the whole rest of the race, did Checo have damage from that? Because we've seen a damaged car only goes so far, and he really struggled this race with that car. And I just don't know if there was floor damage. Yeah, exactly. Floor damage or not. And then what the heck happened with Yuki in this puncture? Yuki, and I have a stat on Yuki later for the last two races. Why would you, the car has to be retired? Right. Why can't you limp around back to the pits and continue?
That was the weirdest, most surreal retirement I think I've ever seen. Because it's like, he's coming down to that corner, and he's like, I got a puncture. There's an exit road there. And then it looked like the onboard made it look like he was just driving off into Singapore. He was going to go for takeaway or something because he just kept driving down that road.
And I'm like, what I figured. He was driving along. He's like, oh, burgers. And he's like, I'll pull over. I'll go get a burger instead. Puncture.
Puncture. Not even like it was a delaminated one where it's flapping around everywhere and is going to cause issues. I mean, you couldn't even see it was a puncture. So that smelt of something not great, to be honest. But
and he hasn't
didn't really.
Not to steal from my stats for later, he hasn't finished a lap in 2 races because he didn't even start in Monza.
And then Alfa did a really weird, Alfa Romeo that is.
Yeah.
There is something to be said for mixing up strategy when you're at the back. And I kind of get it. Mandatory tyre swap. You've got to run 2 compounds. So they decided to put the hard on within
3 laps.
No, there you go. Best of luck now. That's your tyre for the rest of the race. Like on a track which is probably going to have safety cars. I mean, they were trying to downplay it, going, "Oh yes, but 25% of the safety cars we've ever had here are because of those that section that isn't there anymore." Like, okay, that still leaves 75% of them that weren't. But
Oh man, yeah, it was. I was confused by the lap 3 pit stop. Maybe Paul has an update for us. His review. By the way, I committed another breakfast food crime. This time, I microwaved a Pop-Tart. So you're supposed to toast them. And exactly. Just for the record, microwaving nachos for brunchos is better, even though it makes the chips sog out. It's better than microwaving a Pop-Tart because what ends up happening is the edges turn into rock and everything in the middle is 100,000 degrees.
Gosh. Oh man. Right. Well, let's get back to racing.
Yeah, please.
Carlo...
So Ferrari, sorry, at this point, they're backing him up, right?
Ferrari's
telling Carlos, take it easy, and they're telling Charles, back off of his bumper, and we want 3 seconds. Back yourself up to George. And then a couple laps later, they say they want 5 seconds.
Yep.
Gap. 5 seconds is a massive gap to ask the second guy to create. It's a different thing if the first guy drives off. It's another thing to tell number 2, hey, what we're going to need you to do is stop using the gas pedal so much to a tune of 5 seconds.
Genius because
it was.
You don't make Carlos put any extra through his tires and risk them going off. And they were talking about the kind of the geography of the Singapore track, about how the air kind of sits contained inside the walls. You don't really get fresh air kind of blowing into that place too much. So they were just saying how hot it is. If you're following quite closely behind a car, brakes are going to overheat, tires are going to be... So they were basically just trying to ruin everyone else's race by backing Leclerc, which I think is genius stroke. Why not? Well, you've got the chance in a lifetime, or chance in a season at least, sorry, that this is going to be a race win and it's not going to be Max stood on the top step. To do what needs to be done, to be honest.
Agreed 100%. As I said, you play to win the game, right?
Yeah.
You can't always go for a double podium. Sometimes you have to sacrifice your queen so that your king wins the chess match. And they did. And it worked. And the second part, for everyone's benefit who may be newer, because it's one of those things you just don't think about, by having Carlos not go super fast, Rob's right? They saved tires. However, they also kept the field bunched up. So the people behind them couldn't pull the undercut that they might have done. We didn't know the safety car was coming. Because if you pit, you come out of the pits at the end, and you're 15th at best. And to work your way through all these cars at Singapore is impossible. So it's literally a hard track to pass. Track position is super important. The undercut is less powerful. And by backing people up, they actually negated it almost completely, which was... amazing. Great job by Ferrari.
I know, we don't say that very often. So have you got the round of applause sound effect, or can you not find it quickly?
I have it right here. Hold on. I have it here. There you go. You asked for it, you get it. But then, as I mentioned, Logan, we found our first safety car. He just went too fast into a corner, locked it up, went in head first, backed it out, had the wing stuck on the side of his car, and was making it back around. There was carbon fiber on the track.
Yep.
Not a ton, but there was some. And they went with a safety car, which was fascinating to me. I don't know why they went full safety car and why they took so long to call it.
I don't know why they took so long, unless they were waiting for some eyes on the ground to report back. Maybe. I don't know, because
No, you're right.
Because Logan was limping back, so they maybe half of them they're thinking, oh, okay. Because if he'd stuck it in the wall and stayed there, instant safety car, no questions asked. But now he's limping back. It's like, well, unless
most
that
of the
wing dislodges,
right.
Unless that falls off, maybe we can get away with this. And maybe then someone kind of radioed in from the crash site and went, nah, we got to get out there and sweep this crap up. So...
If you have to get someone out as well, a VSC doesn't work because it keeps everyone spread out. A safety car, they bunch up. So you have a minute after they go by to get someone out on the track. Good point, Rob. You might be right on that one. But so it was interesting, right? When this happens, people start boxing. All the leaders come in. Charles, he did get away with a little sneaky because they were double stacking. So he came in super slow to the pits to try to buy himself some time. I don't know if you saw that. He definitely did it. Cost himself a little because he backed so many people up behind him that he couldn't get out of his pit box. Cost him a couple spots from George and Lando.
There was a little bit of kind of reaction online to that one, that Ferrari messed up the double stack. I don't think they did. I don't know that he just got unlucky. If there'd been a nanosecond more, he could have got released, but they had to hold the car back. I mean, he came on the radio, didn't he, afterwards saying, well, what was going on? It's like, we couldn't release you into traffic.
Yeah, there were people there. Nothing you could do there. Fernando went outside the line on his way in, cut and dry penalty. They didn't even need to review it, really. And Max stayed out. So Red Bull had gone on the hard tires, right? They'd gone long on the tire strategy, and this was too early. And I applaud Red Bull. Like, I was thinking about this earlier. All too often we see people try to change their strategy at the last minute. Like, we're going to go long, and then something happens, and they throw it all away, and then it never works. You end up, at best, middling. Red Bull's like, no, we're sticking with our guns. We went for a long haul on the hard tires. This safety car doesn't fit in our strategy. We're going to play our race and see what happens. They rolled the dice. It didn't work for them, but they stuck with it. Now, Max was in second. He got some track position, but him and Checo were now in cars with some really bad tires as they started to fall off, and they were
Really
falling
bad.
like rocks.
Yeah, really bad, and obviously a big hit of a pit stop there got to take against the rest of the field. So I think, like you said, they stuck to their guns and thought, well, there might be another safety car later that will benefit us. So they just went for it. But yeah, and then kind of this was the bit for me after that safety car, before the next one, where we kind of lulled for about 10, 12 laps, where really kind of not a lot was going on, right? What did you write here? Fernando leading the world's longest DRS train.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was like the whole. That was like a formation.
Yeah, it was. There were 8 people, and he was 8th, and there were, I think, 8 or 9 people in the DRS train on lap 30. It was Fernando in front of Esteban, K-Mag, Pierre, Oscar, Liam, Nico, Alex, and Joe was popping in and out of DRS on Alex. So what's that, 8 or 9 cars right behind Fernando? Yeah. Choo-choo.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then what do we have? We had Alonso trying to do one of a few overtakes that we'd seen at this point in the race. And then Ocon just came to a halt, and it tantalizingly almost made it back to the pit lane. And then came to a rest, like what I thought was going to be instant safety car, because I thought he was almost in the pit lane entry and just kind of like, sorry,
pit lane exit,
was it exit?
Yeah.
Whichever, yeah. But I thought, well, that's not a great place to be.
Right.
But that seems to take forever to call, and then it went VSC.
Again, confusing to me. As you say, he's in the line of fire leaving the pits, and even the way the pit lane straight bends around, he's not far out of the way, and they go just VSC. So all right, I mean, it works. There weren't pieces, bits and bobs of the car everywhere, so they didn't have to clean. So maybe that made sense. And plus, I didn't see how they recovered it, but I'm assuming they kind of just pushed it back into the pit lane.
No, same here. I'm assuming that's what happened as well. They just rolled it backwards.
But this was the exciting part. Sorry, this was the exciting part.
I was going to say this is where they lit the touch paper for the whole race. Now
it did
VSC, because the leaders went past. They all went through. Apart from one team that decided to spice things up.
They've been bragging all weekend. All weekend, Mercedes we have an extra set of new mediums and you don't. And everyone's like, who cares? And so everyone's trying to figure out, will these matter? And the whole race is unfolding. And by lap 43, I'm like, well, who cares? They're not going to use these extra set of mediums. And then, as you say, they come in and double stack. And they pop onto these medium tires for the next 19 laps. A little too much for softs. They had the fresh, new, shiny mediums sitting ready to go. And then at this point, Fernando, who had been leading the world's longest DRS train, also pitted. One of the only other cars to come in had the world's longest pit stop. It was like a 25-second pit stop. That was terrible. They couldn't get the car back up on jacks, and it was just a big old mess.
Exactly, and then when he finally got out, I think there was a shot of him about 2 laps later going for a drive down the recovery road because he messed up a call. I mean, he just had bad day at the office for.
It did, but at this point, as you say, no one else pitted. Mercedes went to the mediums, and we had 5 cars in the top 5 with the 2 Mercedes 4th and 5th charging up on Charles, Lando, and Carlos. And the AWS graphics, even though technically this one isn't sponsored by AWS anymore, they couldn't have been any spicier. 2 laps to go until we have a battle. And they were right.
Oh, they were right. They were eating up the ground. I mean, I was debating with my friend Az on WhatsApp and Nimrod. They've both been on DRS as to whether this was a strategy that ended up failing for Mercedes, because they actually, I think, lost a place by doing it. But I'd make this call every single time.
Every time.
They had the window. The double stack was done to perfection. I'm on fresh rubber, and I'm just going to roll the dice and go for it. I think you have to. They absolutely gobbled up the time up to Charles. Charles, I've got to be honest, I know it was all about traction out of corners and he was on old tyres, but I didn't think he did the best job of defending, to be honest. I think he managed to defend for a corner.
I actually was also thinking about this, so I'm appreciative of you for bringing it up. That was terrible defense. And so if you go back, who are like last week, Carlos defending in Monza, everyone who had to come up to him, he defended on Max forever. He defended on Checo for like 15 laps, 10 laps. And then the minute Checo went by, he had Charles up his trumpet with team orders to do no risk, even though Charles' apparently radio wasn't working when that was announced. And so Carlos has become a hell of a defender himself. And I'm going to give Carlos his flowers in a little bit. But man, oh man, Charles' defending was just atrocious.
It was. So that kind of, both of them took Charles pretty quickly. So now they're closing down to Lando, which is when my single most favorite moment of recent seasons, I'm even going this big, Brian, of recent seasons kicked in. We had like a truce between two teams almost that are not teammates. But
they are bromance.
But they are bromance. The Carlando vibe still runs strong. And I think this is just genius. I'd love to understand. I'm sure this all has to be science. He realizes that those Mercs have gobbled up the ground far too quickly, and Charlie Boy hasn't really done much of a job of keeping them at base.
No,
So
your rear gunner went for a snack.
Yeah. So he kind of keeps letting Lando sit in his DRS zone so he can tow Lando, knowing that that is going to make it harder for the Mercs to get past it. And then he would like pull away a bit. And it would look like Lando was getting into trouble, and it felt like he would drop back again and go, "Here you go, buddy. Here you go. Another DRS. Let's go." And it was just genius. It was just Carlo couldn't push any harder because his tires were probably about to go. Therefore, he can't really try to just run away into the distance because he's going to leave Lando all by himself. They'll probably get gobbled up quickly, and then he's got two Mercs chasing him down. I thought it was brilliant. I thought those two played an absolute blinder and showed Leclerc what you should have been doing to try to keep the Mercs behind you. I
agree with you. I loved it. I agree with you 100%. I hate agreeing with you, but especially to this degree. And it was fascinating, right, on the coverage. They showed Carlos's radio, said, "What's the delta to Lando? I want it every lap." And Martin says that's not the people you should be worried about. Martin was right, but what we didn't know was later on there was another radio message, which has been captured on the tweet machine, where he says, the team comes back, 0.8 to Lando. He's in your DRS. And Carlos says, good, that's where I want him. And so I'll do this. I'll do this now. Carlos ran a race, in my mind, that is a career-defining race. I'm not trying to overdo it. I'm just trying to explain. And I've thought about all the other people who've won one or two races, and I'm happy to go through them real fast. But he led, he had pole position. He led the first half of the race in a technically perfect effort to keep the field bunched up so he couldn't be undercut, which was a hard thing to do, but he did it. Then, when Charles decided to do the world's worst defense, he says, all right, I need a buffer between these cars coming on like rocket ships, and the only way to do that is if Lando has DRS and they have a hard time catching him, I'm going to just keep right inside Lando's 1 second delta, but not let Lando so close he thinks he can take the race from me. Because they're still competitors. I know they're friends, but if Lando had a chance for his first win, he's taking it.
Oh, 100%.
So Carlos then was able to maintain that delta, knew who he was defending against, and it wasn't Lando, it was George. And he says, all right, I'm going to sit here and drag, as you say, I'm going to team up with somebody who wants the podium just as much as me, who wants to be up there just as much as I do. I'm going to help him out because he's going to insulate me from them. And he drove on one of the hardest, most physically demanding tracks, the most strategically perfect, tactically perfect race. And so I go back, last thing I'll say, I promise. I'll go back, you look at the other guys. Pierre has one win at Monza after all the crashes, and he did great, but he didn't start up front, and he kind of benefited. Esteban won in Hungary in the rain. Valtteri went bowling, took out half the thing. He did a great job, but he had help along with Fernando's defense on Lewis and others. So, again, great win. And you can look at just about everybody else who has 1 or 2 wins. George's Brazil win, kind of a unique way it came together, end of season, a lot of things were going on, and George did a great job. Carlos's Silverstone win, when we heard this one here, when they wanted him to back up to buy Charles some space, and he won that race at Silverstone, even though everyone seems to have forgotten about it, named Crofty and others. Those are all good wins. They all count, and they're all going to be the same at the end of the day. But this win he earned from the beginning. He stood in front of all 19 other drivers and said, come at me, bro. And no one could touch him. He didn't benefit from anybody else except what he did. And so I thought it was brilliant. And in my mind, the question I have for you, and I think I know your answer, but is Carlos, and this hurts me so much, is Carlos now the top driver at Ferrari?
I've said it for a while. I honestly believe he's the better driver, the more skilled driver.
Is he really?
Charles is great. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's
Charles.
a great lineup. It's a great lineup to have at a team. I just don't see Charles as the number one. That's going to be a stat there that, Carlos is going to convert a pole into a win, which is something that Charles hasn't been fantastic at doing. So, yeah, I mean, brilliant race, brilliant result. Yeah, we need to do our King of Pits versus the Pits. Actually, no, hang on. Before we do,
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do I just give him King of Pits? King of the Pits, just for it. Liam Lawson was brilliant today.
Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. He has, in his very first race at this circuit, which, like you said, is a very, very demanding circuit, walls everywhere, Monaco at speed type thing. He's come in ninth, and actually only finished like 5 or 6 seconds behind Perez in a Red Bull. I mean, he has done phenomenally well. Oscar Piastri was in witness protection today. We did not see him today. Started 17th, finished 7th.
Amazing.
He made it 10 places in Singapore. These two, for me, these two youngsters, I almost want to give like a joint King of Pits, but I can't because I've got to give it to Sainz. But
I agree with you 100%. So actually, if you look down a little bit in my stats, I underlined Piastri and Lawson for that reason. I agree with you.
Okay.
They deserved a joint King of the Pits. They were fantastic, but it's got to be Carlos. I mean, it is. It's an easy one. It's Carlos wins. But also, Liam Lawson, super impressive. Oscar Piastri, super impressive. 2 young guys who really have it. And, we'll get into some of the stats in a second, but the fact that he finished 9th, getting 2 points for AlphaTauri, that's the best finish that car, not even that chassis, but that team has seen this year. And it's his third race at one of, as you said, and I said, the most difficult circuits. But yeah, so I guess we're pretty much aligned.
One is before we get to pits as well, I'm even going to give a little small shout out to Logan Sargent, because he's actually finished about 12 seconds behind Albon, who's been doing brilliant this year in that car. So and that's when he had to even go and replace the nose after it looked like he'd bought the farm and crashed out there. And he's beaten Fernando Alonso. So, I think all of those, the rookies that were out there this year in this race, if you were betting on who's going to bring out the safety car, well, we couldn't bet on Stroll because he didn't take, in fact, we forgot to mention that right at the beginning. We said,
yeah, you said
about his crash, but he didn't take part because he was still too sore. But you'd have been betting on the one of like Lawson or Sargent to completely wipe out and bring out a safety car, but they haven't. They've both brought it home. So
my pits.
Who's your pits?
Yeah, my pits is a 3-way debate. Number 1, Yuki, and again, I'm going to hold back a little bit just because I got some stats, but I don't understand. I mean, we will learn more in the coming days what actually happened. I'm hoping it's more than just a puncture. He's like, oh, F it, I'm out of here for a burger and a swim. I hope that's not what happened. It's very bizarre. But so it's Yuki tied with, for me, Charles, because I know I love Charles so much. But it didn't work. And I know he was kind of being used as a pawn in this whole match to kind of hold people back as well. But Carlos was asked to go slow as well, and he still turned it into something. And Charles' defense was horrendous. He goes, oh, my tires are done. He pitted at the exact same time as Carlos, who held on to win. And I know he was behind him, and all right. So I would say Charles, I would say Yuki, and then just kind of looking across the board, I can't give it to Fernando. I just want to say why I'm not giving it to him for the race he had. That car looked terrible. And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt for what he's done this year as the car has been good and then as people have outdeveloped them. So those are the 3 I thought about, but I'm giving it to Charles.
Ooh. See, I'm giving it to Fernando. He was my pits.
Really?
Yeah.
You're putting it on him versus the car?
Yeah, because I still think a man of his ability, and that car, isn't great, but it hasn't suddenly become the worst car on the grid by a huge margin. So the fact that he got beaten by Lawson, the fact that he got beaten by Sargent, he's been beaten by some drivers that he should be beating. I got this. Fernando down the years has had these like little moments where you think he might throws a little bit of a strop and just gives up.
Yeah.
I think he did today, and I think he's better than that. So for me, he got the pits. But talking of pits and people with pits in their name, like Pitlane Paul. Oh, what a segue. Did we get anything in from the man, the myth, the legend?
We do. We have it in 2 parts. But first, I can't forget the intro music. All right. So as I said, Paul sent us a couple different components to this, so we
Hey,
shall hear it now.
Yes, I'm back. So, it's actually Sunday. Well, I say Sunday morning. It's 12:30, so it is actually Sunday afternoon officially. But in F1 time here in Singapore, we still class it as Sunday morning. And it's 7.5 hours before the race. It seems such a long way away. But I thought I'd do like half of this now and then half of it later after the race. So yeah, Singapore, 87% odd humidity. It's pretty grim, this place, and for the drivers even worse. It's pretty grueling. Let's quickly touch on some of the things that's happened. Obviously, our teammate show has been retained for next year, which is the right decision. You know, we'll back that and push for it because it's just a common sense thing to do. So that's good. And then the excitement of Friday, where a lizard came on the track, so that was good. And then yesterday qualifying, where actually it was a massive shake-up, and a lot of people are slightly out of place, not least Max, who showed a little bit of frustration at the end of qualifying, which is understandable. He's a world champion. He wants to try and win, but you know, after winning 10 races on the row, he's had one where the cars let him down slightly. So it's a bit surprising to see that reaction. I'm sure it's just natural for a driver to think like that, I would say. And then really qualifying is going to make for a great race later on today, which is why I thought I'd do this in two parts, because I think there'll be a lot to discuss later. Obviously, Lance, I mean, that's a huge accident yesterday. I actually love seeing drivers walk away from that kind of thing, which is an obvious statement in itself, but I think the point is people don't realise just how safe these cars actually are. But to see that impact in the bits of the car that come off, again, it just reminds it is dangerous. And if you're in the stands, if you're in the grandstands, you're also vulnerable there. So lucky boy. And we don't want to see that too often. Although, again, like I said, it's a nice reminder that it is actually quite safe, this sport, which is good. So let's see what the race brings. I will check in later on, a little bit more sweaty, a little bit more in need of talcum powder around the gooch, and we will discuss. Speak soon.
All right. Yep, moving on to part 2.
I don't want that vision now where we have to listen to this.
So
this
part
sweaty
2
gooch.
of this, that was a race. It was pretty rubbish for the first part, really, wasn't it? And then just nothing really happened. Then you had a safety car, whatever it was, and then in the ending was really good, making it probably one of the races of the year. So I don't know what I think about that race. If that makes sense. I'm not,
It feels like it's been listening to us.
So yeah, great race at the end. The strategy of Mercedes was fantastic. I thought Carlos Sainz was just superb. What he did, the way that he drove, I just thought was amazing. Lando, Carlos did a job on him. He tried to bring Leclerc back in. Did Ferrari screw up? I don't think so. I don't know. I haven't looked too deeply into it. I don't think so. It's just one of those scenarios. Unfortunately, when you have like a safety car, and like I said, whatever race it was, Holland, you always run the risk of being stopped, of leaving your box by other cars, and that strangely was two Mercs boxing, which I'm not really a fan of. Leclerc being the one that suffers for that, really, because there's no denying it that Mercedes blocked his exit. So, but that's the way it is. George Russell at the end, I mean, I haven't seen the crash, but yeah, it's pressure, it's driving hard. But that's good points for the team that he's thrown away, quite literally. And then, yeah, sort of downwards from there, Liam Lawson, massive shout out to that kid. What a drive that is, and it's not even a case of it being, his second or third Grand Prix. That's actually bizarrely irrelevant. The conditions and in the mental, physical toll that Singapore takes on a driver is beyond words. So to perform like that, that's excellent. That's absolutely out of this world, and I think that is. They did a silly thing with Sky with driver of the day, and I guess Sainz, I get that, but Lawson for me, 100%. That is outstanding. Downwards from there, not really a great deal. It was just. It's nice to not have Red Bull winning, isn't it? Really, they had a bit of a nightmare all week, but. We go on to Japan, and one of the best races of the year, one of the classics. Onwards there, and let's see how that one goes. But a fantastic race, I guess. The last part, not so much a start, but a fantastic race, and one that I'm sure people will speak about for a long time. But it's great to see a different podium, not featuring a Red Bull. Onwards to Japan to eat noodles. Bye bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for also pointing out the fact that I think we didn't even mention, because we got so excited about Carlos' fantastic finishing of the race. Yeah, George crashed right at the end. Right. I don't think we mentioned it.
I don't think we did, actually.
I don't think we did.
Lando,
that radio was heartbreaking.
Oh God, yeah. Lando also hit the same wall as they were, kind of squaring the turn, if we will, going out to make the left. That wall juts out, and Lando bounced off it just a millimeter further away, hit it still, but was safe. George, his car was done. The minute he hit it harder than that and had no chance. So flying into the wall there, he did throw away good points. That was actually my thought while I was watching the Packer game, which they threw away points. But I won't go into that. And so watching George do that, he was pushing too hard. And we, that's my point. Like, we see Charles doing that a lot too when the car doesn't have race pace. And I'm not saying that was the same for George. They had race pace. They were catching them. But you see people outdrive their car. And sometimes the driver tries to be the hero. And you got to find that balance between driver and machine. This coming from a guy who does not know. But so as it seems like you have to have that balance. And it felt like George was trying to be Superman at the end and outcooked himself a little.
Yeah. Right. Which Sapsat jingle are you going to hit us with this week?
I'm going to actually use our old-fashioned, because I loved Paul's thing. When we were in Montreal, the Three Hey Nows is going to be the special jingle this week. Yeah. Hey now! Hey now! Hey now! This is the Singapore GP SAP Stats edition. Now, I'm borrowing a little bit more than normal from Sean Kelly, so I'm giving him a shout-out. He's agreed to come on the pod when we find time, so we will on at some point. Because as I said, I left this to go watch the Packer game, and oh God, that was a heartbreaker. But today was Carlos Sainz's second career win after his victory for Ferrari in the 2022 British Grand Prix, which I've already referenced and played some audio from. It ended Red Bull's streak of 15 consecutive wins. It was Ferrari's fourth ever win at Marina Bay in Singapore. Lando took second. It was McLaren's first podium in Singapore since 2012. It was Norris's third podium of 23 this year, putting him only one short of the best ever in 2021 when he had 4 podiums. Hamilton, this was the only real exciting movement in the championship, moves into the top 3 of the Drivers' Championship for the first time since the opening race of the season. And Charles, who I was being mean about, he had back-to-back fourths after finishing P4 in Monza, although he was trying so hard to be on the podium. And so Red Bull, this was the one I wanted to highlight. It's, we joke about them losing and us trying not to, celebrate their loss, but rather the other teams having a chance to win. However, they failed to win for only the second time in the last 26 races.
That's insane, isn't it?
That is insane. That's total domination. Pierre Gasly at Alpine, second, scored his best ever finish, at Marina Bay with a P6. It was the best finish for them in Singapore since 2017. And then Oscar Piastri, who was tremendous, finished his first Singapore GP in P7 for his sixth point-scoring finish of the season. That was a hell of a drive, hell of a recovery drive for Oscar. Yep. And as you said, I think he started 17th, right? So he got eliminated Q1. And then with P9 for AlphaTauri, Liam Lawson secured his maiden points finish in F1. It was also the first time that car has scored points in 23. Neither Nick DeVries nor Daniel Ricciardo did it. And now I'm going off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure all three previous points had been scored by Yuki in 10th, 10th, and 10th. So I'm pretty sure this is the best AlphaTauri finish of the year with Liam's 9th. And in his 3 starts, now they obviously brought upgrades to Singapore, but they didn't have them before this. Lawson has finished 13th, 11th, and 9th.
He's doing brilliantly. Absolutely brilliantly. Yeah.
Amazing. And then he becomes the 350th driver to ever score points in a Formula One World Championship event. I thought that was kind of cool. This is the total number of drivers to have scored. A couple other things I'd highlight. After crashing his Mercedes in the final lap, George was classified in P16, although it was a DNF, but he was close enough to classify. He failed to score for the second time in 3 races.
Yeah.
It was Esteban Ocon's birthday, and the car gave out on him. And then AlphaTauri's, I've been promising this one, Yuki Tsunoda suffered an early DNF on the first lap, as we talked about. So he has not completed a racing lap in the last 2 races because he DNS'd at Monza and then went out with a puncture on lap 1 there. And the last stat that I have is one you sent me, and then I found it as well. With Verstappen's P5 finish in Singapore, the great Michael Schumacher remains the only driver with a 100% podium record in a season. That season was 2002, where he had a grand total of 1 third-place finish. Everything else was second or first. So Max, not being on the podium, cannot have a 100% podium finish record for the season. So that, for me, closes SAP stats. Rob, anything you'd like to add, change, or augment?
No, let's crack on through fantasy and then look ahead to Japan.
Great. So I'll do fantasy quickly and turn it to you for Japan. Fantasy this week, we had the following top 10. Max Lauren, Super Karate Monkey Death Car, which, by the way, has got to be a great name. Ayal Plan, Lord William II, Tails I Win at F1 Fantasy Hub, RRM Team F1, French Vries, Tampa 1, yeah, baby, FPL Instinctive, Russell My Feather, and Relampico Marquinhos. And I know y'all just name these team names. Something I can't say. You guys just make it so the Midwesterner is going to struggle with these things. I appreciate it.
I look at down this leaderboard. I can't wait for you to get down to some of those. That's amazing. I'm glad fantasy's all yours. I don't even have to try to say these things.
Oh, I can't do it. I was 15th this week. I went with an alternate strategy. It did not crush me, but it did not help me. So I was only a few behind the top 10, but it drops me to 21st in the league, and the top 3 as of now in the league: FPL Instinctive, Michael Cronje 16, and Much Mistaken with Lord William II just on the outside. So that is fantasy, and I have a big update. I have a massive update. Here comes. The knockout pool is done already. We have finished it. No.
Your stupid rule.
No. You know how many people took George to beat someone this week?
Yeah, but we lost a lot of people last week as well. You see...
Well, hold on. If you picked George to win, why would you win? He didn't finish even.
Oh, no. Yeah. George, I agree.
That was like half. That was like 5 people this week.
Yeah, I see. I think, I like this game. I just think you might need to revise these rules. I think if you win, it doesn't matter what the other card does. And then we might have actually had some longevity here and not be done after 3 races. You
and I will debate this in the offseason. So at F1 Fantasy HQ on Twitter is our champion. Definitely go follow them at F1 Fantasy HQ on Twitter is our champ. I will send a tweet tomorrow commemorating this. They win a T-shirt. So congratulations.
Do they not have to win? Do they not have to survive all 10 to win?
No.
Oh, that's a bit lame. Right, okay. Right, Suzuka next week. One of my favourite tracks of the season. It's up there with Spa and Silverstone. I love Japanese Grand Prix. So it's been knocking around for a while. It's been a bit split, actually. I didn't realise how varied it had been. So 1976, 1977 was actually at the Fuji Speedway. Then 1987 through to 2006, it was Suzuka. 2007 and 2008 was back in Fuji. I've completely forgotten about that because in my head, ever since I've been following F1, it's always been at Suzuka. But apparently not.
Right.
We had 2 years at Fuji, and then 2009 back to current day, we're back at Suzuka, where we will do 53 laps of the 3.6-mile circuit. It's a figure of 8 layout, which instantly makes it cool, just for the fact it's got a bridge and it's a figure of eight. I mean, that's how you set up like Scale Electric's cars when you're a kid. You always do a figure of eight. It's
Totally.
just cool.
Although if you're doing it right,
saps.
Scale Electrics, they're supposed to jump. Though. It's not a
Not
bridge.
the
it's a
F1
jump.
ones.
It should
That's
be.
like some stock. No, it should. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Little sap stat type thing here. It's only one of 2 FIA Grade 1 licensed circuits with a figure of eight layout. The other one is Fiorano, which is owned by Ferrari and only used for testing and development, but it does have that license. So
I did not know
there you
that.
go. 18 corners, and it features all corner types, which apparently makes it unique on the F1 circuit. We have ultra slow hairpin, we have the snaking S curves, and then we have the ultra high speed 130R corner where you just basically keep your foot nailed and shut your eyes and hope for the best. And a bit like Spa, although not quite as much as Spa, we've got a lot of elevation change in here as well. So cars up and down all over the place. Love it, love it, love it. But last year's wasn't great, if I'm honest.
No. The rain. I mean,
it was torrential. And when I woke up at 1 a.m., turned on the TV and just saw rain, I was like, oh God, this is going to be really long. Really long.
yeah, I love Suzuka, and I actually, before I was really into F1, this was on Pole Position and all the other video games here in the States, and I fell in love with it immediately. And it is just a tremendous track to watch. And as a video gamer as well, drive on games, I can't wait. It's one of my favorites of the year. If you remember, you joked about, we opened the episode talking about Seb, would he ever come back? He's always said this is by far, bar none, his favorite track. And if he ever came back, it would be to drive the Japanese G at Suzuka. He loves it much. So
yeah,
I can't wait for next week.
Neither can I. Last year, Sainz will be hoping he has a better year than last year. Last year, he aquaplaned on lap 2, which is when they sent that recovery tractor out to go get him while the cars were still out on track, which did not go down well. Max converted pole into a win, but if you remember, it was the one where we had the bizarre situation where we only ran for 28 laps because we triggered the 3-hour limit, which was brilliant at 1 a.m. to go for a full 3 hours of this thing. And everyone's like, well, we're going to get 50 points point allocation because we only did 28 laps, so Max isn't champion because we didn't do enough laps. And then I think it was in the cool-down room, they were like, no, actually, well done, you're the champion.
Go into the other special room. You're allowed to sit in the big red chair. Do you remember that red chair?
Yes.
That was so dumb.
Was
Like you go in there, he goes, are you sure?
And everyone was like, but how? We only did 28 laps. And like, yeah, because the rule states if a race is suspended and cannot be resumed, then we give 50% points. This one was suspended and then resumed, so the other way around. So they did finish under green flag conditions, therefore it's 100% points. And literally everybody in the paddock is going, that's the dumbest thing ever. When we came up with this idea, we meant if you can't finish the whole race, and it was to try to get around Spa the previous year where they'd done those 2 laps behind the safety car and got 50% points. So like, this is crazy. You've got to have some sort of sliding
George's
scale.
P2, whichever he forgets about.
So straight after this, they then immediately change the rules again. They go, no. It doesn't matter what order the suspension and the resumption. Like, if you don't do X amount of laps, you don't get full points. So they kind of sorted all of that out. But yeah, Max went in his special chair and was champion. It felt like a bit of a damp squib for him because for ages he didn't think he'd done it. And they were like, oh, no, yeah, you're champ. Oh, thanks. Repeat driver winners, the legendary Schumacher we mentioned again has got 6, Hamilton 5, Vettel 4, Berger, Senna, Damon Hill, Hakkinen and Alonso have all got 2. Repeat constructor winners, it's one of the tracks where we don't say Ferrari up at the top. It's McLaren with 9, Ferrari with 7, Merc with 6, Red Bull with 5, Benetton and Williams with 3, and Renault with 2. Just before we sign off for the week and say we'll wish everybody a good week and see you in Suzuka, we got to revisit your tinfoil hat. I'm fully expecting that in Suzuka, Red Bull will be back to domination. It was a track just like last year that they can't get any performance out of, and it's got nothing to do with flexi wings because that's just for insane people. But go on, get your hats on.
Well, so in order to get my hat on properly, I'm going to pull a straddle here. Not just a hedging option with my options, but I'm going to say this. I think there's a real chance we don't see Red Bull dominate at Suzuka the way they have before. I think this, I just can't, my brain cannot compute them going from winning by 25 seconds, regardless of track type, to having such a bad car. And I know I listened to all the things. They tried to overcorrect after Friday, and then they did too much, and then they were in Parc Ferme, and they couldn't do this, and it didn't agree with the track, and they couldn't fire up the tire. There's 8,000 reasons. Yeah. But a little bit of me is confused how they still weren't battling, how they didn't just take a step back to join everyone at the, like Max, let's talk about Max, take one step backwards and join everyone at the front of the pack. He took 2 or 3 steps backwards, which to me is just bizarre. And so, like, the team that had the most upgrades was AlphaTauri. I didn't hear a lot about Ferrari upgrades. I didn't hear a lot about McLaren upgrades or Mercedes upgrades. Yet Red Bull went back so far. So
same as they did last year.
My straddle is this. I'm curious what next week brings. I will watch with incredibly, anxious eyes to see what actually happens. I think part of me says that this is Technical Directive 18, and we'll see them at best fighting for the win with the other team. Max fighting for the win instead of motoring off to the sunset.
So
Hold on,
one second.
Hang on.
No. I can't let this drivel go on any further. 1 second.
Yeah.
You honestly believe that Red Bull, through that tiny amount of flexing, and it was tiny because it wasn't even like illegal, it was within the rules of how much you could flex. You think they were the only car on the entire grid that had a flexi wing? No one else did, therefore no one else suffered from performance this week, and that strange little tiny insignificant thing has taken Max back to 11th.
It was more, no, I think the track was bad for them, right? But I think it was more than just bad for them. I think the other team that was highlighted as being a potential candidate for having a problem with this, you remember who it was? It was Aston Martin.
Red Bull weren't.
They were. The videos, they may not have been in the articles we read, but the videos they showed, their wings moving. The louvers actually kind of moving forward and backwards depending on how fast.
I think Ferrari moved more. Ferrari were moving loads.
Okay, so I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
I think.
But Aston Martin was the other team that was cited in the articles and all that, and they sucked. So my point is,
they sucked the week before as well.
Well, they've sucked since before the break. But so they sucked worse though. My point is, I think there's a chance that we see Max being, battling with people for the win. I don't think he drives off to the sunset. However,
I think he does.
Okay, well, let me finish. I think here's my podium. I'm still putting Max winning at the top step. That's my straddle. Either they're going to be, I think they're coming back, but I'm still giving it to Max to win. However, I have to give the second step to Carlos because what have you done for me lately? He's done everything. And then I have Lando on my third step. I think the McLaren will be good here. So
I don't think this is going to play into Ferrari's strengths. I don't think they're going to have the race pace here. As much as I want to see them back up there, I think it's going to be Max. I think it's going to be Checo. I think it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2. And I think Lando's going to get on the podium and equal his 4 of the season.
So we both think Lando's up there with Max. The question is...
the McLaren is fast.
Do you think Max wins by more than 5-10 seconds? Okay, I don't.
Yeah, I think normal services resume completely next week.
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
And that's the tinfoil hat. And we shall find out if there's any merit in it or if I should put it in the microwave with my Pop-Tarts.
I think you just might have to.
Everybody, thanks so very much for listening this week. It was an epically good Singapore Grand Prix. I do agree with Pitlane Paul, a little lull in the beginning, but then it turned around. And we can't wait to see what happens next week at the Japanese Grand Prix. Join us in a week's time.